Hello and welcome. I'm wearing the shirt. It is 10:30. It is the 27th day of 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM, the conflicted, controversial, toxic gaper creeper who will sell out. And today we're talking about a topic that came up in the roundtable discussion forum that I was part of last Sunday. Thank you, Legion of Myth, for inviting me. Obviously, they're not inviting me back because I guess I'm just too handsome or wasn't smart enough. So I was going over the video and I was going over the question Max asked, and I watched my answer, and I don't know if I gave the answer the way Max wanted to hear it, or if I really understood the question, or maybe my brain just didn't process it correctly. I could have been nervous, I could have been tired, it could have just been the autism acting up. It could have been lack of food. Who knows? I mean, it was like 5 hours long. So Max asked a couple questions, which he sort of thought were ironic, generational, whatever. And I thought I'd readdress them. And the main topic was involving like tropes and the hobby of the tropes. So first of all, what is a trope? Because that's a big word we use a lot to make ourselves sound smart. But what is it? And where does it come from? So let's consult the Infomatic. Trope, a figurative or metaphorical use of a word or expression, a significant or recurrent theme or motif. Its origins are in the mid-16th century via Latin from Greek. Tropos, turn, way, trope. So what is the meaning? A word or expression used in a figurative sense, figure of speech, a common or overused theme or device or cliche. The usual horror movie tropes. So the final girl in a horror movie would be a horror movie trope. So now that we understand what a trope is, a reoccurring theme, let's look again at the questions Max asked and see if I can do a better job answering them. And I think I have smoosh on my face. Maybe it's time to shave this. I don't know. Do you believe the hobby of the past, it's like OSR D&D, like, so everything, so for, okay, pre-4th edition, post-4th edition, Gygaxian D&D, OSR is pre-4th edition. Then we have 4th edition, which is its own separate beast, which we have talked about, and we'll probably talk about again. And then we have the critters and the soft and fluffy rainbows and unicorns in 5th edition. 3rd edition, OSR, Gygaxian D&D from day 1 to 3 point whatever, 3, say 3.5 is probably considered part of the 4th edition crowd for whatever. Has several variations. We've done a video on that, and we'll do a video on that again. At least 18 versions of from white box to 3.5. So, but all that sort of falls under the blanket, I guess, of Gygaxian, Arneson, D&D. But that's such a mess because there's so many different versions. So, do I believe the hobby of D&D past has passed me by? And the play style that I grew up on from the 70s through whatever has passed me by. So, has the hobby changed? Yes. Has the hobby passed me by? No. Has play styles changed from OSR to now? Yes, definitely. Has the industry changed? Yes. Has the target audience of the industry changed? Definitely. Am I the target audience of the gaming industry right now? No. So, do I believe the hobby has passed me by? No. Do I believe there's a difference between the OSR style of play and the current style of play? I don't think the mechanics hasn't changed, but maybe the way people play has changed. Maybe the way that people interpret the information has changed. The art has changed. Not that there's any better or worse way, just the art has changed. D&D is still D&D. The name implies a certain mindset. The mechanics are still the same. The basic system is still the same. This mythical idea of how we role play, well, since that was never written down anywhere as an actual rule set, just stuff we just sort of grew with the game and evolved with the game as people played because they chose to or not chose to, that has evolved, yes, but is imagination, make-believe, improv changed? No, just more voices have been added to the word salad, and more people have had a chance to be exposed and bring their personal experiences, so the art has evolved, but it's still the same basic mechanics. So, do I believe the hobby has passed me by? No. Do I believe playstyles have passed me by? No. Do I believe I'm the target audience of the hobby? Absolutely not. I am not the target audience. Question number 2, do I think the tropes of the past are gone? Be more specific. Okay, which trope of the past? How you create characters? Well, the standard rule is 3d6. Play them as they lie. Everybody has their own take on that. So if you're just talking about character creation tropes, no, because nobody ever understood them in the beginning. So, and I don't think people still don't understand them. So I don't think that's changed. So do I think the tropes of the past have changed? What tropes? What tropes? What reoccurring themes that existed in the past that you don't think exist now? If we're just talking Dungeons and Dragons is still, for the most part, based around a bunch of idiots with sticks going in a hole, killing everything in the hole, and taking their stuff, and then coming back. And then progressing and getting more powerful so that they can go into a bigger hole, fight bigger things, kill them, and take back bigger stuff. So has that trope of D&D changed just because there's now all this blah, 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 and blah, 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 and attachments, and, we've Legoed it up and made it bigger and more cinematic and more over the top and more about role-playing and character agency, and we've got people dressing up and doing voices, and we've got, 6-year-long story arcs about someone's mother not really being their mother. That's just personal choice, but the basic trope of go in the cave, kill the monster, take its stuff, it's all orc. Pie. Your job is to get the pie away from the orc. So I don't know what tropes Max meant to think that those tropes are gone. I'm going to assume I'm looking at my notes. So I think the main tropes maybe are just, the death trope, that OSR D&D was way more deadly than current D&D is. And yes, it is a lot harder to die in 5e than it was in whatever, previous editions. Because 5e is a superhero role-playing game disguised as Dungeons and Dragons. It was harder to die in 4th edition because they gave everybody the ability to heal themselves. It was harder to die in 3rd edition because healing spells were more powerful. Everybody got more stuff at lower levels. Everybody got more hit points at more level. It was easier to die. It was harder to die in 2nd edition than 1st edition because we were tougher. There was more character classes. There was more spells. Magic was easier to get. And, we died in 1st edition because we were playing in a world that was hard. Nobody really understood the rules. And, we didn't have a lot of stuff to begin with. As the game has progressed, it has been harder to kill characters. But death has always been like the common cold in D&D, even going all the way back to the very beginning. Dead characters, on the average, tended to not stay dead if there was a character that somebody was really attached to, or whatever. They would always find a way somehow more often than not, if they want a character to come back, they would find a way to come back. I mean, my personal experience, of course, being that I had a character that died in a second edition game, and I didn't want that character to be dead. I played a different character, but in the back of my mind, I was always like, I'm going to find a way to bring this character back. And I knew that, it was the let's drag his finger with us. In my case, it was an eye. But I knew the eye was out there, and I knew that eventually I would find a way to manipulate the game to get that character back because I wanted it back. It might never have happened, but it was like always in the back of my mind. And eventually it did happen, and I got the character back for a little bit. And it was, fun, and then it was sort of anticlimactic. It was more fun trying to get it to happen than actually happen. But still, if the idea is we're going through a dungeon and we're playing disposable characters, and then, you can just make one up again, great. That's fine. That's a wonderful way to play. And, back in the old days when you could get a character on a 3x5 card and not really care as much, sure. The game has progressed. The investment in the game has progressed. People can get upset if their characters die now, but people got upset back then if their characters died now, or people could not care back then, and people don't care now. It just really sort of depends upon the table and the atmosphere and the style. And it could be a character you love and they die, and you could be like, okay, whatever, I'm over with it. Or you could be like, I'm going to find a way to bring that character back. So, really, yeah, if the trope you're addressing is the death trope, then yeah. The only other trope I could think of is the suboptimal character trope, and the idea that OSR players played optimized characters and 5th edition players don't. The 5th edition is all about story and, playing characters who aren't optimized, and that's a bunch of bullshit. There's as many power gamers now as there was then. If not, there's more power gamers now and more ways to optimize 5th edition because there's more options. When we played for the first 20 years, from 0 edition to 3.5, it was 3d6, play them as they lie, that's it. That's what you start with. My very first character, the one I was just talking about, the character that I most associate with being my first D&D character, was a wizard in 2nd edition who rolled a d4 for his hit points and started with 1 hit point and had suboptimal stats because I rolled 3d6 and I played them in line, and my strength was awful, my dex was awful, my con was awful, my intelligence obviously was pretty high because I was playing a wizard. My wisdom was 8, I think, and I never changed that. I always played that character. He had an 8 wisdom, and I think he had a decent charisma, which is like his one saving grace, as he was kind of smart, and he had a good charisma, which meant like he could sort of played it like, well, I guess the way I survived was sort of just like being crafty and sort of trying to outthink. And I played that character every time I played it. I figure I'm gonna die. I've got 1 hit point, and I know 1 spell because it's 2nd edition, and then I'm done for the day. What am I going to do if I'm in trouble? Throw rocks, which is what I did. Threw rocks and tried to trick monsters, playing off that high charisma. But every character was suboptimal. Characters aren't suboptimal now. Everybody plays power games in one way or another, and power fantasy characters. Whether your power fantasy is min-maxing to take full advantage of all the stat bonuses and everything, or power fantasy is I want to play some quirky little half-orc transsexual handicapped cupcake maker, tiefling who whatever. And we all know I'm talking about Jester. That's a power fantasy too. So the power fantasy trope hasn't changed. Are there tropes that are over? No. They still exist. So whatever it was that you think was in the OSR 0 through 3rd edition that isn't now, it's there. All the tropes are still there. It hasn't changed. People haven't changed. The tribalism, the mentality, the toxicity, the creativity, the cinematics, as the world has evolved, as entertainment has evolved, as our access to technology has evolved, as our opinions has evolved, as more people with more life experiences have come to the game, the way we play the game may have changed. Obviously, Critical Role sort of inspires people to be more creative and tell more stories, but that's been around since Dragonlance with creative storytelling games. That was around during the time of Troubles. That was around, people were always telling stories and trying to do Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Indiana Jones and D&D. We're more aware of it because of this. And finally, how do you address somebody if they tell you you're playing your game wrong? Like, you're playing an OSR game and a Critter cinematic player comes to your game and says you're playing your game wrong. You're playing a cinematic Critter epic story game, World of Darkness, and some OSR player comes and says you're playing wrong. Janet Price is telling you you're playing D&D wrong because, old Ravenloft and old Oriental Adventures was offensive to somebody. They weren't. How do you address that? How do you address somebody who tells you their game is wrong? Well, I don't know. They're coming at you with a sort of hostile attack. The best way is to win without fighting. Just go, you know what? I'm not going to have this conversation with you. If you think my game is wrong, don't play. Art is never wrong. If my art doesn't offend someone, then I'm doing my art wrong, because art is meant to incite, inspire, make you think, and offend. Art is meant to offend in some way. So you could come and say, my art, my game is wrong, and that's fine. It's wrong for you, but it's not wrong for my table, because if one person is saying, your game fucking sucks, there's 8 other people who are saying, I love your game. And from 2002 to 2018, I was consistently running a game every week from anywhere from 3 to 13 players from multiple facets of humanity, all of whom agreed that my art was good for them at that point in time. People evolve, people change, opinions change, ideas change, people believe, and people believe hard. Role-playing gamers are a very passionate fan-based. D&D is a very passionate sport. So, whatever. Do I believe the hobby has passed me by? The hobby has not passed me by. I am not the target audience of the game developers anymore, at least not of the Dungeons & Dragons game developers. Wizards of the Coast believes that I am not their target audience. That they believe their target audience is the Critical Role fans for 5th edition and Magic players. For 4th edition, they believe their target audience was video game players and Magic players. For 3rd edition, well, from the transition between TSR and Wizards of the Coast, they believe their target audience was the generational players, the people who had been playing and were still playing 2nd edition and were used to 2nd edition and were having kids and introducing the game to the kids. But I'm not Wizards of the Coast target audience. Am I the target audience of the hobby? Obviously, I'm the target audience of some aspect of the hobby. What aspect of the hobby am I a target audience now of? I'm probably the target audience of the hobby makers who are making games like Degenesis. Here's a $200 game. You can afford it because you've reached a point in your life where you've got a disposable income. So that's probably and I'm definitely the target audience for the OSR and the companies who are making D&D-like games, but not making them following the Wizards of the Coast formula. And guess what, critters? Guess what, fans of the Janet Price? Guess what, members of the cult of Mercer? You're going to be left behind too, because 3, 5, 8, 10 years from now, there will be a new audience. Just like the 4th edition fan base was not the 3rd edition fan base, and the 5th edition fan base was not the 4th edition fan base, there will be a new fan base. And that will be the target audience of Wizards of the Coast. Because at the end of the day, Hasbro's job is to make money. And they will try and make the most amount of money they can, the quickest amount of money they can, from the largest group of people that they can. And they will say and do whatever they need to do to make that money over who they think their target audience is. So, critters, do not be surprised if 2 to 5 years from now, somebody comes up to you and says, you're playing the game wrong. That's not the way D&D is meant to be played. I saw so-and-so on the so-and-so, and that's the way we play D&D now. Matt Mercer's style is wrong, and I'm offended by the way you play D&D. The same attacks you're making against people like me, I assure you, somebody's going to make against you, because it's the same thing that happened in 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. Somebody's going to tell you you're playing the game wrong. But guess what? There's no wrong way to play the game, because it's a game. It's imagination. It's make-believe. So I hope these answers were the answers Max wanted to hear, or maybe I clarified myself better. This what I should have said maybe, but I didn't really have anything planned, and I could come up with excuses for why I sounded stupid, but let's face it, I'm stupid. Anyways, that's it. I hope you appreciate this content. If you do, let me know. If you don't appreciate this content and are planning on unsubscribing, contact me and let me know why you're unsubscribing, because I can't fix it if you don't tell me what's broken. Please hit that sub button. Help me hit 500 subs by August 4th, and we'll do something crazy. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that notification button so you always know what's going on and helps with the algorithm. Comment down below because it helps with the algorithm. And above all, support me because I need money and I will sell out. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay hydrated, stay classy. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, and we'll talk to you losers later. I hope I answered those questions right. And if I did it, so what? Art's never wrong, so screw you, Max.